in my farm. I gotta go find it. Find it.
We're ready to go. Yes, quiet. Well, I'm doing quite fine, although college has been beating me to a pulp. Hmm. Other than that, I've been doing great.
Oh, I'm still here. I just muted myself.
I'm your friendly neighborhood voice actor, the Darkest Soul VA.
Hello, I'm the Knight of Green, paleontologist, and Soulsborne martial arts expert and enthusiast.
Yeah. What? Hmm.
It's been 2 years? Huh. Must be a very big DLC because usually From comes out with DLC about like a year in. So, okay. So it's gonna be episodic like Dark Souls 2 or 3 where they like split into even further, or they're just gonna you saying it's just gonna be just one big chunk thing like Old Hunters. Okay. Can't wait. Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, it does seem fair on that. Hmm.
Isn't that the person who does like walkthroughs and stuff? Or stuff? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Of the deal. Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
I do.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
See, but here's the thing, though. If we look at the content, if you play God of War Ragnarok, I'm not shaming the content that we got for free for Ragnarok, but if you played it, it's not like it's bad or anything, but it's like I imagine the quality of Elden Ring DLC is going to be much different than God of War Ragnarok, because the Valhalla DLC is basically like doing like what are those? What are those like dungeon crawly? It's like a dungeon crawler. If you guys have played it, kind of, yeah. There are some like story elements about like Kratos developing as a person afterwards, but I don't think like it's going to compare to Elden Ring's DLC in terms of like scope of what's happening. I played God of War. The what was it? All the God of War games on the highest difficulty. So I'm whatever. Like I know my skill in the game. So if they want to be like, oh, you're just bad at it or something, I don't know. Like, but though I will say though, if any of you guys have played Jedi Fallen Order Survivor, um, the spawn of Ogdo, oh my gosh, it's harder than Melania.
Of Ogdo Bogdo.
Yeah, that thing is harder than Melania. Like legit. I am not. I am genuinely serious.
Yeah, I
If you
can
play
fact
on
check what he's speaking is
difficulty,
the truth.
a three-eyed alien frog is harder than Melania on Grandmaster difficulty. Or Survivor, the sequel. So in the first game, there's a Ogdo Bogdo. It's an early game, like I shouldn't say secret boss, but it's an early like you could find it like start. Yes, yeah, yeah. In the sequel, there's the spawn. So basically, the son of that thing decides it wants to mess with you, and that thing's evil. Oh, it gets even worse. After you beat it, you find another secret boss where you have to fight both it and its dad. I'm like, nope. Yes. Look, you got. I will tell you, it's so bad. I'm not the only one who says that. So if you know like Moist Critical or other people that played it, they will say that Ogdo Bogdo is comparable, if not more difficult than Melania. Like, is that obnoxious? The spawn of Ogdo. Yeah. Sorry. Away from Elden Ring, but yeah. Eh. Melania and Radon better be in a dual phase gang fight. We need it. We need to see Radon. Remember, Radon in his prime, pretty much tied. Even though I'm going to say he had the edge because she knocked herself out. She had to be carried away. And remember, Radon was ganked by all the Clean Rot Knights. So yes, before the fight. So just remember that he was ganked and he was still standing. And if literally Finley didn't carry Melania out that situation, it would have just been a W for Radon. Like, just be quite honest. See, it's basically like realistically, yes, you could say, oh well, it wasn't defeat because it was essentially a draw. I mean, yeah, because it didn't play out to the fullest extent for it to be a win or defeat. But I would imagine. I mean, well, and that's another thing. If you remember, she literally right has the Scarlet was Ionia inside of her. She literally did cheat and used literally something she doesn't like about herself to like, oh, I'm losing, so I'm gonna blow myself up and like give you Scarlet Rot. Like that just seems what's the word? Salty and unfair. Yeah. What is Radon? Radon literally was the strength dude who literally said, "Oh, I love my horse so much, I'm going to teach myself magic so I can ride my little tiny horse." Like that. Like
Hmm.
that'd be like Hollow keeping a pet dog, and it'd be like this Hollow is like lost his mind, but his love for his dog is so strong. He still remembers that even as a Hollow. Look, the Final Fan. We're on Final Fantasy. What number now? I thought it was supposed to be the Final Fantasy. Why are we on like? Oh, I want to see them try. Even though I was supposed to say, is GameStop doing well nowadays? Like, how's that doing? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Bye. Bye.
What? Yes. That. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mike was muted. Sure thing.
What?
Hmm.
Stay with me. Stay with me. Oh, I'm talking to my kid. Sorry. Okay.
Sounds great.
これね、平で叩けるかもしれない。あ、じゃあ平で叩いてこうやって。平で叩いてこうやって。僕らの感覚だと、こうするでしょ？こうついててほしいんだよね。
This is probably the closest technique to our unique parry techniques in our Ryuha, Asami Shinryu.
あ、なかなかいい。ちょっと見つかるが、ちょっと見つかりました。
All right, shall we continue? All right. Shall we continue?
皆さん、こんにちは。And welcome to Let's Out Six Sensei. I'm the host Shogo from Let's Out Shogo, and this is Six Sensei. よろしくお願いいたします。お願いします。こちらですね。
わかんない。
これ実は、ロングソードで。
いやいや、どう使っていいかわかんない。
そうなんですよ。
あ
全然ちょっと、ロングソードと刀全く違うものでもあるんですけれども、
Okay. Pause it.
たくさんですね、先生、ヒーマンについてどうお考えですかっていう、実は。
Oh, can you hear me?
Six Sensei is a Kobudo master with more than 40 years.
Okay. So it's really interesting that he mentions that they're completely different. Though I'm gonna bring out. I'm about to bring out something. So I'm bringing out a longer. This is not exactly a katana. This is the longer end. Of on the scale of it, but I'm going to show some of the basic things when it comes to similarities because they talk about how these things are different, even though there's more similarities than I would say is differences, if you would ask me. Okay. Just this. Okay, flip. I flip. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is a longer one, not necessarily one that you usually see trained with the Ruhas and stuff like that. So I'm gonna get the one that he used first. So, sidewise, yeah, I would say he's using comes down to right here. So sidewise, they're really very similar in a lot of the aspects. Like the blade length is relatively similar. Handle relatively similar. They're for the most part two-handed weapons, though there are one-handed techniques between them. So the biggest thing I would say is there's flight curve when it comes to katana. So when it comes to most attacks, it's very front heavy, just sort of cut down. And it's not as good as thrusting because it's not straight blade. You know, you have to do thrust to curve with that. So one was only one blade versus two. Long swords have two sides with the blade, and as have little. Sorry, I'll have to pause for a second.
Bless you.
Okay, my bad. Going to be interruptions. 4 kids. I apologize. So, biggest thing is katanas are for the most part, single-edged curves, so they're better at slicing and cutting. Long swords are a little bit better for thrusting. And also, one thing he mentioned in the beginning of his video was the fact that he said that, I wish there was more guards on the longsword that come out on the side. Well, if you guys know anything about the evolution of longswords into great swords, longswords eventually did evolve those side pieces in the guards right here. So, they could, they're so different. But realistically, a sword's a sword. They have very similar use cases. I've been talking to people who do Japanese martial arts, and they have many of the similar types of techniques that you can do with both types of swords. So I would say they're largely more similar than different, believe it or not. Also, use cases, right? A lot of times put a huge emphasis on the use of swords, but swords weren't as common on the battlefield as you would think. It's like saying, in modern day fights, right, most people have a sidearm pistol and they have like an assault rifle, essentially, right? Yes, they're carried to it, but realistically, you're not going to primarily use a sword. And even the time when people had swords as primary weapons, like, for example, the Zweihander is a primary weapon used in formation combat. It was more likely you'd find pikes and pole arms like halberds and stuff versus actual swords. So, yep, exactly. And the part that ended up happening is swords became, because think about it, back in the day, making a high quality sword, regardless of where you're at, was a very expensive endeavor, and so only people who really had money, wealth, and status could really afford to have a sword, because essentially just how much went into making a sword. So it sort of became a thing where most of the time where you see sword would be in like duels per se, because like say, I have a problem with this nobleman, he has a problem with me, so we dueled with swords because it's like a status symbol. It's also supposed to be like representative of like it's the most honorable whatever, and it's also the most like representative of where we are as a society, something like that. So it's really kind of interesting because we look at a lot of the combat manuals I can speak from the European side of things. It was mostly oriented towards noblemen and like princes, lords, and stuff, because essentially it was a thing where people go around challenging people. So if it was like, think about like let's say what's it called, entrepreneurship, where essentially you would go around saying, hey, I wrote a book on how to survive a duel with a sword against other nobles. Would you buy my book and learn my lessons? Like, will you take my court? Like, think about that sort of mentality that we have nowadays and put it back then where that was more apparent. People were just dueling. So yeah, let's continue what he said. Or the video. Sorry, on my long ramblings and interruptions. But mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, start. Yeah.
Years of experience in training with Japanese katana. However, none of us have any experience with Western swords. But I thought it might be interesting to hand a longsword to Six-Sensei, who doesn't know anything about it, and see how he would try to use it. So today, Six-Sensei, 22nd Headmaster of Kobudo Asami Shinryu with 400 years of history, will try fighting with a longsword with zero experience and knowledge. I hope this video will be interesting for anyone training with longswords, to see what a katana master would think of doing with a longsword. However, again, we have no experience with Hima and longswords, so if you are making any mistakes or have any misunderstandings, please let us know in the comments. By the way, tickets for a 3-day training camp in Japan by Six-Sensei and Masasu Shogo are now on sale. Check out our Patreon page for more information. So then, let's get started. After Sensei swung the longsword around in the dojo for a while, there was something he wanted to say immediately.
これがちょっと自分に当たりそうになるね。邪魔な感じがするね。
ですよね。
It's just something you get used to, so just pause real quick.
For katana users,
That's just something you have to really get used to. You have to just sort of know. It's like with the same thing with even if you have like the round part, you just have to know the weapon you're using and know sort of where everything is framed. The reason why the cross guard sticks out is because there are certain guards that you can. So I'm going to show you an example of some guards where the cross guard becomes very apparent. And yes. Hold on, I'm trying to see my feed. Hold on a second. Repeat the question. You are correct. So what you can do what is called half sorting, where you essentially use the blade as like a makeshift spear, also like a warhammer. These parts, if they were ridged and stuff, you can use them as hooks to hook between things, hook someone's legs and yank. Or again, yeah, if someone's wearing like armor and stuff, because swords are not very good at puncturing armor, even with like slashes or cuts, if you're going for like mail or exposed parts, what you can use things like the crossguard and jam in the eye, use it to help catch blades, because even though, yeah, he's like, oh, it pokes me, but this is a larger surface area to help catch and hook things. One of the guards is called crown or prong, where you sort of hold the guard straight up like this. You can use it to catch swords, to move your spine, to do different things, as an example. So it's a useful thing, and it's the same thing. Even if you're having something like a katana with the suba, which is this one, you just have to get used to where it's projected to know what you can and cannot do with this. This is a case thing. But again, if you wanted to have long swords and their later evolution great swords, to have them, so if you're used to they're essentially there. It is on the smaller end. This is the smaller end of a sword holder, so it's closer in size to a long. So how it works is swords transition, right? So Zweihander's only slightly bigger, like only a few inches bigger than my actual longsword. This is technically a Zweihander class weapon, but again, so how it works is longswords evolved under two paths. They evolved under the path of the greatsword and the path of the rapier. So either get bigger, meatier greatswords, Zweihander, stuff like that, or you get thinner, pointier, and become rapiers. And that's pretty much. Okay, continue.
the handguard that stretches to the side is something that we are not used
Yeah.
to. If you try to swing it like a katana, the handguard hits your head and shoulders. So Sensei has a question for any longsword trainees watching this video.
僕らの感覚だと、するでしょこうついててほしいんだよね。知りたいと
どういう風に使うのか。
Already answered this
何もわ
question.
からない。
From our point of view, we would want the
I just-
handguard to be stretching in the direction of the sharp edge. Why is it in this direction, and how should we handle it correctly? Are we doing something wrong? But there was one part that he liked very much.
これはいいね。
下のところでストッパーがついてるっていう。
Because the end of the hilt is slightly larger, you can throw thrust the sword forward, and it stops in your hand. This is actually a technique you can do with the katana too. We'll make a video about
Okay,
this.
pause it.
Then let's
Pause
have
it.
Skala-san.
Those are actual historical techniques as well. There's several ways of initiating it. You can do it off of thrust as well as sweeps. So what they're describing is the following. So essentially, if you're in a dueling position, right, it's kind of a cheap tactic. So essentially, you're both at range, right? What you can do is you can hit your hands with the blade forward to essentially get yourself a lot of extra reach. So you can get a leg, thrust forward. It's essentially it's kind of a cheap tactic. It's not as pronounced as in like long swords. It's much more stumpier, and it kind of is a little bit more uniform with the blade. It is there, but it's not as like pronounced. Okay, you can play.
San joined with a Bokuto to see how he could fight against the katana. The very obvious difference between a longsword and a katana is,
それがないからね。
It's not
使
curved
えない
first.
for example, using the maki techniques we've introduced before is very difficult without a curve. Other typical techniques like ukenagashi and hitting the katana away worked, but Sensei was constantly surprised by how long the sword could reach. However, when he tried half swording, we found a problem.
あ、これが。
You gotta get
The
used to it.
handguard got caught in the opening of the kimono. There are various theories, but this could be another reason why the tsuba handguards of Japanese katana are round. But because the tsuba is round, it doesn't do as much guarding as a longsword.
ただ、受けんのには安定するね。ガンってこう。絶対安定する。
刀のつばより全然安定し
全然安
ますね。
定するね。
Yep.
You could do something similar with the katana, but it wouldn't be so stable. After trying various techniques with the longsword, there was something that Sensei realized.
これでさ、こう使うと、反りがないけど、こう使えば。
Ooh, he's figuring out how to use the flat of the blade.
ああ
Good. He figured it out. He answered my
平で
question.
ペンそう一
それで
連のような作用ができる。
So what he said the following was, he was like, oh, because it's not curved, it's harder to bind and wind with it. And I was like, yes, but you forget the fact that because the katana has that curve and it has like a broader surface area, you have to turn your sword in a way that it has a better surface area to then bind and wind. And then he figured it out. You put the face that you want. So there's two parts to that. It's the face that you want on it, because you can use the flat of the blade so you have more surface area to then start pushing. You can also control where your distance of the sword is. So if you use closer to the tip or the end of the sword, it's not as good as winding, versus if you use closer, it's called the strong or shield, which is closer to your hand, that area. So like, if you watched him do it, he uses sort of like that thicker area of the sword where it had more weight to it. It's easier to bind and wind and get your maneuverability and or pressure on your opponent's blade when you use that part of it. So he figured it out on his own, and I applaud him for doing that.
If you flip the sword and use the Y side of the blade, you can parry the opponent's sword. This is probably the closest technique to our unique parry techniques in our Ryuha, Asayame Shinryu. Then, if this is possible, Sensei thought up another technique you might be able to use.
これね、平で叩けるかもしれない。平で叩いてこうやって。平で叩いてこうやって。日本刀
Yeah,
だったら
so those are techniques you have. But he used the two hands.
これ平でね、平で叩いてこうやる。ほら。ほら。
Both swords are primarily two-handed weapons, though there are one-handed techniques you can't. So both katanas and longswords are in the category that like it's loosely considered a hand and a half. So it's like, you know, you can comfortably use it two hands, though you can switch between one-handed things if you need to. But realistically, most of the stuff you learn is two-handed stuff. I'll be quite honest. Unless, of course, if you're using like shotos or smaller Japanese swords, then it would be primarily. It just depends on the length of the handle and the blade of how you would primarily use it as one, two, or somewhere in between. Like transition between both. Yeah, so funny that you mentioned that. I actually went to a Viking seminar and been watching different things on how to use one-handed swords with two hands. It's really hilarious. So let me actually get a sample of a one-handed sword and actually teach you guys how to do that. because I actually learned that. 'Cause I'm curious about that too. Of like, wait, do that? Most- That's again historically it's been like that, so it's sort of a continuation of how it was from the ancient past. So how it is. Okay, so let's show it real quick. So how it works is see how I'm trying to get a good angle. Okay, so it's really uncomfortable for me to grab it like this because it's like the pommel is like sticking out, so it's really uncomfortable like this. But what I can do is grab on the top of my hand like this, so I essentially have both of my arms to like cut into things. So say for example, I land a cut on someone's neck, and I can push through to then sort of saw through it with both my hands. So that's the way you do it, which is really brutal. But hey, you can use two hands on a one-handed object, and knives. Same thing. If it's like a smaller knife handle, you could use your other hand on the rear and sort of push into it when you stab into somebody. It's kind of it's a experiment in understanding the brutality of what humans can do. But if you want to look, I'm saying you can use it with two hands, but you have to hold the back of your hand in order to you have arms to have less leverage. But no, what's your question? If it starts sliding, it's pretty much that. So if your hands are like sweaty or covered in blood, it's more likely to happen. But if you're wearing like gloves and stuff like that, or like mail or like gauntlets and stuff, then you don't have to worry about that. So it's one of those things where it's like, yes, you could technically do it, and I would prefer not to do it if I didn't have to. But like I've done it before, at things in a half sword maneuver, and comfortable. No, you would have your fingers have to slide across the blade because it's not like a lightsaber where if you touch it, it comes off. You have to slide. So if again, it's more so a concern if it's like really sweaty or really bloody and it like has more give to slide. I would see that as more of an issue, but again, I would still prefer to wear gloves. I've done it, and I had people who've done it as well, like stabbed or cut things in a half sorting manner, and they said it's uncomfortable though because it's just kind of like a prickly feeling, but it's not like going to kill you though. It's cool. Yeah.
勝手にそれてくる。勝手にそれてくる。
If you try to use this technique from the Jodan upper stance, you must make some adjustments.
こうなっちゃうけどね。こうなっちゃう。だから引いて使おうかな、俺が。
So he doesn't know this yet, but he can use the rear. He can use the rear edge.
お
He doesn't have to just use the point.
こう。お
He might discover.
なかなかいい。
ちょっとこれが、ちょっと疲れました。
平に当ててこうするっていうのが、なかなかいい。
おーい。
I said you don't have to use the point. So how it works is there's many different. So okay, how it works in the long sword schools is that there's different sort of like say you do any technique, you can in the attack in a thrust, in a point, in a in the attack in a cut, in the point, in a slice, and you can do that what are called like lead edge, back edge. You can do them with all sorts of different like weird things. So he's mostly focusing on using either the flat or the point, which he's treating it as if it only has one edge. But if you want to be creative and open your mind, I'm not sure if you might discover it later in the video, but you can do all sorts of crazy backhanded things, like a cut where so you saw how that one where he like was rising up from the rear, he was in the back and then came up to rise for a cut. You could do things where you clash and then use the inside edge to pull on the back of their neck as they try to push it away from themselves. So they would push it into their own neck and they would cut themselves off the back end of it. So, it's just little tricksy things you can do with the longsword because it has two edges that it can play around with. Oh, anytime.
No, not really. And I'm totally fine. I've just been busy. Mm-hmm.
Thanks to Six Sensei realizing this technique, he started to like the longsword very much. Then from here, Skara-san will hold a longsword instead to see how Six Sensei will fight against it with a katana.
Yes, techniques
After
too.
trying out a variety of techniques, there was something that Six Sensei realized.
そっか、これね、真ん中にしのぎ立ってっからだ。案外とそれちゃう。
あー、なるほど。
だから、こう当てがう。そうすると、ほら。
手でも
うん、
スパーンといってしまうんですね。
で、こう当てがうと、
怖い。
Shinogi is a word that refers to the ridges on the blade. Because the shinogi of the longsword is in the middle of the blade, there are two sides where the blade could get parried away, which is much more easily parried than a katana if you use our asa.
That is the English name. So it's a matter of, again, like I mentioned earlier, was what part of the blade comes in contact with what. Are you using the flat to deflect? Are you using the closer part to the handle? Are you deliberately attacking the end? But here's the thing, though: if you know anything about rapier fencing and how windy it is, long swords are again half the long swords became great swords, half became rapier. Not exactly half, but you know what I mean. Like the family lineage of long swords became these two things. Yeah. So it has a lot of similarities with S-stocks and rapiers in that, yes, you can say, oh, if I attack the edge of the blade, right, I can easily deflect and parry it. But you think that because you easily deflected or parried it, that means that, it's over? No, Eisen, don't touch it. What you can do from certain positions, so say you parried it, because there's a rear edge, you can do things where you come up on the other side of the opponent using that rear side. So I'll see if I can demonstrate it, but I got 4 kids. I apologize. They're running around. I'll try to demonstrate it. Real quick. Okay. My thing set up. Is it on me? Okay. So there's pressure on this side of the blade to push it deflected this way, right? You can do where you rotate, snap around, cut with the other side. Push this side, come up, snap around, cut that. So you're using the inside edge. So even if it's deflected easily, there are things you can do to save yourself. Also, remember, because the pommel is a weapon and basically a mini mace, even if someone deflects it and then rotates it so that the back of the... So basically, they push it away so they have the back. You can then use that as momentum to smack them with the pommel of your sword, too. So it's not just the blade is out of the way, so it's therefore, not an issue. No, you still have a live other end of the weapon that can still come and hit you. Because you push one and the other end is swinging into you. Yes. This is why even when wearing armor, a lot of pommel things have to be called out. Like, so, for example, you have to say pommel and hold a position. You can't sit there and beat someone with the pommel even in armor because, again, it has properties similar to a mini mace in that you can bludgeon through that and knock someone out or give them concussions. Mm-hmm. Falchion. Falchion is the one you're looking for. Yeah, because falchions, they might have like a back edge, but it's on the lower. Like, when I say lower, I mean like upper end of it. But they're mostly like big, fat, one-edge blades. Some of them might have like fancy round, like cross scars or what's called nagel and things like messers, where it's like the side has like points that come out for that type of thing. Also, there's something called the Kriegsmesser, if you've never seen that, which is literally the European equivalent of a katana. It's literally curved, long blade, two-handed. It has side cross guards, and it's like basically okay. You know what? Who was it? What's the blade from Bloodborne? The Shikaji. Yeah. Basically, take that, add round. Remember the round, like those round sides of the Zweihander. Add that to that, and that's a Kriegsmesser. Basically, that is a comparable sword to the katana. So, and this is going to be the thing that out of all the sword traditions, when it comes from both Japan and Europe, longsword and the katana have the most reported saved history about how to use them, if that makes any sense. So it's more so of we have the resources to understand how to use these swords. Hey, we have the resources and how to understand how people use these swords. Is sort of why those comparisons. Because, like, for example, there are treatises and stuff how to use great swords, but those aren't really as common. And also, it's much more dangerous to practice with great swords because by virtue of the momentum and weight of getting hit by it. Because yep, and you're correct. When you stop, I think I was showing you guys, if you stop swinging them, you're basically dead on the water. If you're in a group fight, but the whole thing is momentum. Using, believe it or not, it's kind of funny to think about. But essentially, just imagine someone with a very long range sword, and they're sitting there using the momentum of their weapon to parry everything around them, and then like decapitating people. It's kind of scary to think about.
New techniques.
合わせる方がいいけんだね。だからこうやっといて、ブンブン来る。ね、合力でブンブン来るっていうのがいいかもしれない。合わせるとやりやすいね。と合わせると。
This was the biggest and most interesting finding we had this day. In traditional Japanese kenjutsu, effectively using the shinogi to block, parry, and attack is very important.
Well, that whole interaction is again.
Today, thank you very much for watching. 私も初めて実は見たというか持ってみたというか、日本刀の方の特徴であったりとか技術を再確認できたので、これ気になっちゃって。そうですね。使い方ですね。とにかく、はい。そこをぜひもたくさんやって。
Yeah, I was about to say, wait until he learns the fact that you can hold the sword backwards and use it like a bludgeon. It'd be like literally going to be like, hey, you know the kanabo, you know the things that you guys use? Just it's that except just miniature. I'm not dissing them. They're definitely people who are very well versed in what they do, and this is the first time given that. I think they would discover a lot of the principles on how to use it if they had it for a longer time. Sort of just like a first-hand glance. Like, for example, if you gave me Aizen, Aelin, if you gave me a sword I've never used, I might not have a general. Like, for example, there's it's a sword, kind of like an in between like a sword and a dagger. It's called messer, which basically just means like long knife or whatever, right? And what a lot of it is while practicing with it, if you try to fight with it like a longsword, you can do some similar things, but it's more so a grappling weapon. So you have to grapple someone's arms and then basically, finish them off. So it's like you have to have a slightly different mindset when using it, not just like think, oh, because I know how to use this weapon, it's kind of I can't use this one because it's like, oh, it gets easily parried. No, you have to like use it differently and be aware of how it works and functions. So I think like if you it's like, again, with Souls games and most video games, they see great sword, big heavy sword, big slow. No, believe it or not, I can swing great swords faster than I can swing my longs just by virtue of once I have the momentum to get the swing in, its weight is carrying itself through the swing. So I can actually swing it faster and it's using itself to go through. and do a lot of flows, if that makes sense. See, and it's funny you mentioned that. If you have pretty good leg strength and you have a stable core, you can actually use greatsword because realistically, guess how heavy greatswords are. Yep. And I think that the equivalent to that because what was I about to say? In pounds. Let me actually look up because I'm actually not that good with doing the conversions. So, would you would said 5-6 kilograms? No, you're fine. You're fine. 30 pounds. Believe it or not, that's on the extreme heavier side. That's on the more fancier, like display ones. So in your measurement, closer to, I would say closer to 4.5, 5, in that range. 4.5 kilograms. Yep. Eight to like, yeah. Yep. Not heavy. It, you can. So I can hold my heaviest greatswords I can hold with one hand. But again, it's less of the fact that they're heavy, it's just the way the weight's distributed. Because it's like, it's like even if you hold a long rod, right? Even if the rod itself is like not that heavy, because it's long, it's kind of makes it seem like it's more cumbersome. But again, the greatsword strength is mostly using its momentum. And it's like the same thing with like whips and stuff. How like the whip, even though you're doing a smaller action with your arms, because the whip is long, it's making the end travel faster than your arm. So the final end greatsword is technically swinging much faster, and is also the punch. Yes, I wouldn't say a master. I mean, I've been studying it for almost a decade, but doesn't mean I'm a master. 'Cause- well, I would say more than a novice. Like, what's the word? Adept. I would use the word adept because I know people who've been for like half, if not more, of their life, and they like write books and stuff. I'm not that level yet. Yeah, no, I can. The people who did the video, the Japanese sword deck, they're very skilled at what they do. You can tell by their movements and the way they carry themselves. They're very skilled swordsmen. I can't take that away from them. They're very learned in what they are. Again, I'm going to say because they didn't have it for as long as they could, they probably would have discovered a lot of the things they could do with it. But I overall am not disrespecting them, and I'm not gonna say that I'm not gonna be like, oh, like they're really wrong. No, and believe it or not, there's more similarities than differences when it comes to techniques. From talking to people who have held and used both for like a substantial time. Again, it's most. Yep. And, yep. It's like the guards, even like the way you hold the sword, like I hold it over my head, hold it behind me, hold the point in front, like all those things are very similar. And yeah, that's just for that. Once you know how to adjust for that, then you just like it becomes more instinctual once you know how to do it. Mm-hmm. So anytime.
Yeah.
I was just basically listening to the master at his work because honestly, I was taking notes.
Oh, you want to learn? Oh, let's say Darc. You want to learn how to use swords?
Yeah, well, I might be curious for obvious reasons.
Again, that has a historical connotation as well by virtue of swords were least common when it comes to math. Most people had spears because get stick. Yeah, it was say get stick, sharpen stick. You got spear. Yeah, they didn't have axes or material swords like that. Also another thing. No, you're right. But also another thing, even in modern day, I'll be quite honest. One of the biggest issues that I see with HEMA, which is you guys know historically martial arts, is the price to get into it seriously is pretty steep. Because to get training long swords, they can be very pricey. To get the protective armor to do full force sparring is expensive. Like, you can if you want to get like, flimsy little things and like say, oh, I just want headgear or whatever. But to get, I'm not trying to be like a purist or whatever, but the feel of actually of getting hit with steels, um, is not, even in armor. It's not even in armor is not no. You get bruised. Like, yep. And I've almost broken my thumb and fingers a couple times, even through that. Also, it's from the way that I've got caught before with the sword before. But yeah, there has been instances from tournaments from people I've been speaking with where they've been in tournaments and people have snapped other swords and they didn't know and they had to call off the fight because when you snap a sword and the bit that remains is sharp, that could probably puncture and pierce through someone. Um, so, it's one of those things where when you think about it, because you're essentially, like not trying to toot the horn of Kima, essentially, yes, there's some things you can't do, like, you can't pommel each other to death, but it's sort of like ramping yourself up to almost simulated violence. Not purely because, you're not like jumping people in the back alleyway. It's still like a duel setting, but like the sort of effort and force you're putting behind it is very similar to like you're just straight up fighting somebody.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Oh, are there? Oh, so do you ever get comments or people who are interested in like us doing specific things or have like any responses to things? I'm actually curious. Oh, we just gotta either find a niche or just do what we can. I mean, I've been having fun all this time, so I'm not really complaining. Hmm. Yep. Gotta wait for my kids to get a little older, then I have more room to do stuff.
Don't tell me. Ah, shit.
Something happened?
I did. Oh, crap. I think something did
I
happen.
know. What happened?
Oops, the microphone audio has been off.
For me or
Me!
for you? Oh.
Well, I don't think that's important. I think you were the star of the show, so it was my fault for not double checking.
Is there a way to like save the Discord call and then like insert it separately or something like that?
No, sadly no. But the point is, this was your thing. So apologies.
Oh,
So I'm going to restate everything I've said, just in case. Links are down below for the video originally, so sorry about that. I should have checked, but it's one of those human error mistakes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the point is that the more important thing is that you two got the audio, not me.
Mm. I think you had some questions, and I think there are a lot of fair and reasonable things you asked. So I
think okay. If anybody's watched up to this point, then basically just listen to Green's answers, and you'll probably catch up on the questions. Oh well,
yeah.
What, make a mistake? Huh?
So I hope I said them in a way that
you did. You answered my questions, so the issue was my end. I'm so sorry, everybody. So yes, again, to reiterate that everything I said is down below. Once again, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I appreciate you, everybody, coming here despite the hour stream of me being silent. Then again, I think most people would find that as a reprieve. But yes, thank you so much for joining us for this day. It was nice talking to you all. Final thoughts on tonight?
We need to do more.
Indeed, we do need to do more. And so, as I say, I'm the Old Hunter. Yes, good question. So, yes.
Sorry,
anyway,
bad joke.
It's fine. It's fine. But anyway, I'm the Old Hunter. Thank you for joining us.
And I'm your friendly neighborhood voice actor who does voice actor work for Dark Souls.
Oh, Knight of Green, paleontologist, and swords guy.
And as I always say, may the blood guide your way.
And fear the old blood.
I love it that we have a good routine on this one, don't we?